Welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolf and Gavin Shaw here. And if you haven't heard, Damian Lillard is a Milwaukee Buck, which is pretty big news for the entire NBA. So we're going to spend pretty much this whole show dissecting what it means for the Knicks. What does this do for the Knicks' chances in the East this year and going forward? Will Giannis potentially still be on the table at some point down the line? Can we see that happening? And could or should the Knicks go after Jrue Holiday, who is now apparently a very available trade candidate from the Portland Trailblazers? We're getting into all that next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. And I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that auto download function on your favorite podcast app or the notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode, because we are back to being here 5 days a week for you guys leading up to training camp and the new Knicks season. And if that's not enough for you, and you want to hear our thoughts once things start getting rolling this season with various Knicks rumors and Knicks games and everything else, you could check us out on Subtext, where you can literally just text with us right from your phone. Doesn't get much easier than that. So check out the link in the episode description if that is something that interests you. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm Editor-in-Chief of Knicks site The Strickland, which you can find at strick.land. And he is Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster, And Damian Lillard is your favorite Milwaukee Bucks, favorite Milwaukee Buck, in all likelihood, because if your favorite Milwaukee Buck is Giannis Antetokounmpo, he's probably quite happy today. Gavin, the trade is now official. Damian Lillard, everybody's been begging Woj for mostly Heat fans have been begging Woj, report Dame. Well, he reported Dame today. Damian Lillard goes to Milwaukee, 3-team deal, which sends Jrue Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, Toumani Camara, and a one Milwaukee first-round pick in 2029 and two unprotected swaps in 2028 and 2030 to the Blazers. And then Phoenix inserted themselves in this trade and made the Nurkic for Ayton rumors come true by getting Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nas Little, and Keon Johnson in this deal. Gavin, I guess first, quick reaction. I don't know. How are you feeling about this deal? I was at work and this news broke, and those of us in my office that are NBA fans were like, oh, what? What just happened?
Yeah. Yeah, it was one of those where were you when you heard moments in the NBA? I mean, totally shifts the landscape of the Eastern Conference. We thought for months, foregone conclusion, he was going to the Miami Heat. They were going to emerge as either the favorites or you could argue the co-favorites with the Celtics and the Bucks. I think I would have had them as the favorites if they had gotten Dame. And now I kind of think Milwaukee is way ahead of everyone. And sure, it knocks, and we'll talk about this in a sec, because I think this could end in a world where not only is Milwaukee elevated, but one of Boston, Miami, or Philly is substantially elevated if they find a way to trade for Jrue Holiday. But for the time being, it knocks the Heat down a couple of pegs from kind of the speculative, all right, we'll have them at fourth, but really they're either first or sixth or seventh in the regular season. And now they're going to be way down. But I think it makes the Bucks overwhelming favorites in the Eastern Conference is my clear-cut biggest takeaway from this. Dame and Giannis together represents, I don't know, one of the 3 to 4 to 5 most dangerous pick-and-roll combos in the history of the NBA. You're talking about in Dame, probably the second best pull-up three-point shooter. Really, no probably about it. He is the second best pull-up three-point shooter in the history of basketball. Teaming up with just one of the most feared downhill presences can you use presence as a multiple? I'm not sure. But anyways, one of the most feared downhill guys in the history of the NBA, and Giannis, and you have a whole lot of spacing around them, right? It's what we always talk about with the Knicks dreaming of. Brook Lopez, a center that can hit threes. Chris Middleton, when he's healthy, obviously a more than capable shooter. Whoever their fifth guy is, whether it's Connaughton or Jay Crowder, or if they play Malik Beasley out there. I mean, just ridiculous amounts of shooting to probably buoy Giannis to a season where he's going to put up maybe the most easy 30 points per game like we've seen in the NBA in a long time, and the most efficient 30 points in the NBA we're going to see in a long time. There's some questions there, can Lopez and Middleton hold up in terms of just their age and their health? Can Dame do anything defensively? But I don't know, Alex. What this leaves me with is I would be pretty surprised if Milwaukee does not win the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, same. I mean, I just think that pick and roll combo is so good, but they did so well to build the depth this offseason that they can absorb losing like Grayson Allen, for example, who was, a big part of what they did. So you're losing two starters, out of your starting lineup, and then obviously the huge upgrade of Lillard to Holiday, or over Holiday, I should say, um, to go with still having enough depth to just be like, well, okay, you lose Allen, but you can move Connaughton into that starting lineup, I think, and be fine. I think you'll be all right. Or if you want more shooting, Malik Beasley is a great shooter, and if nothing else, he's proven that over the years that he could shoot threes on volume and do what you need there. But they have enough options on the team to sort of configure that starting lineup however they want and still have enough shooting to come off the bench, or enough defense to come off the bench, like whatever it is that you need, whatever it is you want to prioritize to start the game versus end the game. They have configurations they can set up. They can make up for the defensive loss that you get going to Lillard from Holiday and the offensive improvement. I mean, I would not be surprised if Giannis and Dame average 65 points combined this year. I mean, if they're both 30 plus point per game guys, like I would not be surprised, because how do you defend it? It's just you run the pick. Giannis starts.
It's 30 feet away from the basket, right?
Yeah.
That's where you're getting out on Giannis, or trying to.
Yeah. And then you have to make this decision. Okay, well, do we put enough attention on Giannis that now we're going to leave Lillard that sliver of light that he needs? Or do we sell out on Lillard and then have to try to scramble to protect the rim from one of the most devastating rim finishers and foul drawers in NBA history?
Yep.
Just there's going to be no defending it. I mean,
and they're shooting all around. He's spraying it out. Like if you crash, like a good 3-point shooter is going to have an open shot.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, to answer the question that we sought to answer in this first segment here, like as far as the Knicks' chances in the East, I mean, I don't think that they were super great going into this year to begin with. Like, I certainly was not thinking the Knicks are going to win a championship this year. The Knicks are going to win the Eastern Conference this year. I would struggle to even say, like, I feel confident that the Knicks are going to make the Eastern Conference Finals this year. Like, I think there's still at least one more move, like whatever their big move is, which we'll talk about in the next segment. Like, if Giannis can still potentially be that down the road at some point, but like whatever their big move is, like that is what's going to push them to that level. But that said, like, I just think the Bucks they have to be, I don't even think just the favorites to win the East. I think they're just the favorites to win the whole thing this year, period. Like this deal was about as deadly of a place as you could have possibly sent Lillard, because I just don't, they're just like a match made in heaven, Lillard and Giannis, and they're going to be so hard to stop. Like, I feel like the Knicks the Knicks, I don't know how this is going to affect their plans. Like, if this makes them more likely to hold off for longer and try to bank on development, because I just really think, barring any injuries or anything, this duo plus Chris Middleton, if he can stay healthy, are just going to have such a stranglehold on the top of the East for the next few years.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. I think Middleton is kind of the only question there. And if you're another team and you have hope, and most teams don't want to face their hope over rooting for someone to get hurt, but like if there is a hope, you're like, what does Middleton's health look like going forward, coming off a season where he played 30 something games and just did not look like the same two-way player that made him capable of being arguably the second best guy, if not the 2B guy on a championship team. But even if they don't have Middleton, I think they could win the East. Like, I think Giannis and Dame together is that deadly. And we kind of saw it a few years ago when Middleton got hurt in the playoffs against the Celtics. Like, Giannis still almost carried them to that series. Like, he's that good. He's capable of being that dominant, and the space that Dame is going to give him, again, unless they had found a way to trade for Steph Curry, no one else on earth could give Giannis that type of room, that type of platform to attack the basket. And I see all these people on Twitter being like, hey, like I saw Mark Jones, ESPN announcer, tweeting about this. Like, man, a lot of guards in the East, happy Jrue Holiday isn't there anymore. Don't underestimate what they lose from him defensively. And he is, like, I am a big Jrue Holiday fan. He is an awesome player. You hear it from guys in the league all the time who say he's the best defender in all basketball, has been for a few years. Brilliant point guard. Just not a super efficient scorer the last 3 postseasons. And Dame is obviously the opposite of that. Of course, he falls off in the postseason a little bit too, like everyone does. But the baseline for Dame, as we saw last year, is that he was the best scorer in basketball when he's healthy. And he probably just had the best season of his career. There's some questions about how he's going to age, and we can address those, Alex, in just a second in terms of Giannis's future free agency. But for next season, like I'm with you. I just don't see any way in the world that that's not the best 1-2 combo in the NBA. Look, Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, at some point they're going to have something to say about that. But right now it is really scary for the rest of the Eastern Conference and the rest of the NBA.
Well, let's stop doom and glooming about how the Knicks are going to have a really tough road for the next 2-3 years. And instead, next segment will attempt to make the case that maybe the Knicks can still go after Giannis in a couple years, which seemed a lot more realistic 12 hours ago. But first, I got to just remind everybody that this episode is brought to you by DoorDash. And did you burn your last piece of toast? You can be honest. Maybe you did. Did your avocados go bad? Mine always do. They're such a fickle thing. Or is the hot sauce bottle empty? Try grocery delivery from DoorDash. You'll get everything you want delivered when you need it right to your door. You've trusted DoorDash to deliver your restaurant favorites, and now you can get grocery delivery that actually delivers too. With thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you'll find the best in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with each and every order. You'll get exactly what you ordered, or DoorDash will make it right. So sit back and enjoy quality groceries just like you picked them yourself. And if you want even more value, you can save on all your grocery and restaurant favorites with a $0 delivery fee on all eligible orders with a Dash Pass membership. With easy substitutions right in the app and best-in-class customer support, DoorDash delivers groceries exactly how you want it. Get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to a $20 value when you use code LOCKEDONNBA at checkout. Limited time offer, terms apply. That's 50% off up to $20, no minimum subtotal, and delivery fees and zero delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter code LOCKEDONNBA. Don't forget that's code LOCKEDONNBA for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. All right, and we're back in, continuing on Giannis trade day. It was a big one today. This is the first, easily the biggest news item of this offseason, I think, and the first trickle of real news in weeks. We've been in a desert waiting for some form of news, Knicks or otherwise, and we got it. Gavin, I think the big question now, if we were talking about trickles of news, there was Giannis himself made headlines a couple times over this summer. Basically, anytime he had a microphone in front of him being like, I love Milwaukee. I would love to be a Buck for the rest of my career, but if they're not winning and if they're not doing what I want and if they're not making good moves, I'll totally leave and go somewhere else. It was, if you read between the lines, that was basically it. And of course that led to talk about, could the Knicks be involved? And Ian Begley had some good things to say about that in one of his mailbags, another article where he was kind of like, they're definitely keeping eyes on the situation. It's not something that's imminent, but it's also kind of a tricky situation where maybe they're trying to keep the powder a little too dry for Giannis, and it could potentially prohibit them from making moves, in the more near term. What do you think as far as the Giannis saga now? I sort of feel like there's a very good chance that it's all but dead for the Knicks at this point, especially if the Bucks work out as well as they should.
I think I disagree to some extent, because I think that's the consensus I've seen. All right, it's over, but let's just talk through it. So he has until October 23rd to sign a player extension this season, right? So that's the day before the season starts. He can sign a 3-year extension, the first year of which would be his current player option year, which is 2025-26. So if he signed that, he would next be a free agent in the 2028 offseason when he would be 33 years old. That's a long way down the road. The Knicks and us on this podcast can't really think that far right now. My other thought was, I was kind of wondering when Milwaukee was maybe on the precipice of doing this deal, is there any chance they went to Giannis and were like, hey, we can get Dame, but if we're going to do this, we need you to sign an extension because we're mortgaging our future here, right? They gave up, I can't remember the exact pick, but one very late pick down the road and the 2 pick swap. So if Giannis leaves and Milwaukee is bad, this could be a devastating trade for them. I don't want to say on par with the Nets Celtics trade that got the Celtics Tatum and Brown, because I think there's a much more logical hope that the Bucks are title contenders and those Nets would ever be title contenders, but it could have a devastating effect down the road if Giannis were to leave. So it would make sense for Milwaukee to say hey, we want to guarantee you're going to be here. But Giannis just still has all the leverage in that situation, right? And I would assume he was like, it makes me much more likely to stay. I still want to see what it looks like. And I just don't see him giving that leverage up, even if it was to get Dame. So I think ultimately that probably didn't happen. But if that happened, then yeah, this is over, and we'd find in the next 2 weeks when he signs an extension. This arguably makes the Bucks better the next 2 years, pending like some kind of severe breakdown. Like there's no way that Giannis is leaving next summer anymore, right? That pipe dream is dead. But 2 years down the road, like, is there a world where he just doesn't want to tie his wagon to a then like 34, 35-year-old Damian Lillard? I think that is, I don't know, Alex, am I being crazy? That's kind of my glimmer of hope that he's going to look and he's like, all right, maybe somewhere's better. And my only thought coming out of that is like, isn't that what LeBron would do? And like, even when Cleveland had the option to be like, all right, we will trade this pick we got from the Celtics, but you need to guarantee you'll stay. And he didn't want to do it. It was because he like, one, he wanted to live in LA, but two, like he knew there were still going to be better places he could win. And I wonder if Giannis still thinks that 2 years from now.
I kind of think Giannis is starting to think about his legacy, and I think that's going to influence a lot of what he does going forward. I do think that there's probably a part of him that looks at Milwaukee sort of like thinking to himself, like, do I want to be like their Dwayne Wade? Do I want to be their Kobe? Where like, Kobe's maybe a bad example because he won so many
Dirk,
championships.
maybe.
But yeah, like, yeah, Dirk maybe, or like a plus version of Dirk. Like, I think he wants to win at least one more championship. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's what he thinks for his legacy. Like, and I think he's sort of been hinting at that, where he's like, I want to win another championship, and I only have so many years left. I mean, he's probably aware of his own mortality to a certain degree of like, I play a very dominating physical style of basketball. And like, the longer my career goes on, the harder it's going to be to, keep doing that. So my thought is, if Milwaukee does manage to win a championship with Lillard, I kind of think no matter what accounting Giannis does in his head, like if they win the title this year or next year, I feel like he'll probably extend in Milwaukee, because I just think that then he would be like, I have 2 championships, I have multiple MVPs. Maybe he wins an MVP one of those years with Lillard too, because that's going to juice his stature. Like, if they're that dominant and he's still being himself and being as awesome as he is, there's a good chance he might get MVP hype again. So if he like wins another MVP, wins another finals MVP, wins a finals, I think at that point he would probably look at things and say, I feel like it's better for my legacy at this point too. And especially for a community that has embraced him and has really loved him in Milwaukee, from what it sounds like. Like, it sounds like he genuinely does actually like it there. Like, I think he would at that point say, okay, fine, I'm fine settling down. I'll play out, the rest of Dame's career. Hopefully they can do enough to maybe put me in title contention one more time in my career. But, I'll finish my career here. If they go through and they have disappointing outings, and like for all this fanfare, if they like make second round exits 2 years in a row or something, or God forbid a first round exit again, then I think there's a very real chance that he's like, nope, thanks for trying, but this is it. Like, you guys have no assets left. This thing with Lillard isn't working out. Like, I think it's done. And I think that is the only chance. But I think it all just kind of comes down to championship or bust, I think, is more or less what it is. And I think they've got, I'm sure Milwaukee understands this, but I think they have like a 2-year window to cash in on that, or else maybe there could be a world where the Knicks could find themselves in this conversation again.
Yeah, I think it just all comes down to how Lillard ages and how he looks over the next 2 years. Like, I think if next season he's still putting up 30 points per game, it's a tough sell for Giannis to go anywhere else, right? And to say, I don't have the best chance of winning in Milwaukee. I want to finish I think it'll be about, I want to finish my career with Dame. I want to pay off his willingness to come to Milwaukee. And this is the dude I want to run with over anyone else, because I think he can get me to the promised land. And as we said, outside of Steph and maybe Luka, like, this is, and you could throw Jokic in there. I'm sure there's some other names you could argue for, but this is just about the best like player you could pair Giannis with. The thing is, like, small guards tend not to age well, right? That is the historical precedent. The exception tends to be guys who are exceptional shooters. Like Steve Nash was really good into his mid-30s. He fell off at about 37. Chris Paul, obviously until last year, was still like a guy who could help you win a championship, despite, could help you reach the finals. Let's say that, because he was an absolute elite shooter, elite mid-range scorer, elite creator. Steph at 35 now is showing no signs of slowing down. Lillard's 33. Like, the shooting is not going to go away, but part of what makes him special is that He's that level of shooter off the dribble, and he's super explosive and can drive down the lane and finish through contact. Like if that starts shifting a little bit in the wrong direction and the defense gets closer and closer to where Trae Young is, and to be clear, Dame pretty much I think Dame, I don't want to say Dame is Trae with better PR because Dame is an infinitely better shooter than Trae Young is, but defensively, Dame is kind of Trae with better PR. He's already like bottom 5 or so defender in the NBA. Those are the only things, like, again, with Middleton and Lopez aging, that I think could convince Giannis that this just isn't tenable. But I'm with you. At the end of the day, it is a big blow to the Knicks' hopes of one day getting Giannis.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting. Like, I actually recorded these out of order, but tomorrow's episode I just recorded with Evan Dammerel of Locked On Cavs, and like, there's an interesting discussion we had in that episode, if you want to tune in tomorrow, that basically centers around like, would the Knicks now potentially start looking at a guy like Donovan Mitchell again? And even though he's not the caliber of player of Giannis, could they maybe convince themselves to just finally be like, you know what, like if this guy becomes available, let's just go for it. Like we gotta make some sort of consolidation move at some point and try to, take this next step. Like maybe Mitchell is still that guy. I wonder if that's where the Knicks focuses are going to go. Or, I mean, I feel like now their eyes are just going to be squarely on Joel Embiid. And first off, seeing how the Harden trade saga works out, or just the Harden saga in general. If they don't trade him, we know what kind of a teammate and human being James Harden can be when he's really unhappy. So I think they're going to be really watching that with a keen eye, trying to see if Embiid becomes their new target more so than Giannis. Like I just get the feeling that they would probably at this point be willing to just kind of let that ship sail unless nothing better comes along between now and then. Like the Knicks are just very steadfast in wanting to pay the right price for someone and not a cent more, and their version of the right price for someone. So, I think it's gonna come down to a lot of different factors, but maybe they do find themselves back in the discussion. Another guy that maybe they could find themselves in the discussion for is Jrue Holiday, who is now apparently super available. No big surprise there because obviously Portland going a very different direction at this point, but Jrue Holiday is now super available. They'll probably leave this trade open-ended for a couple weeks to allow Portland to try to reroute Holiday, allow the Chris Paul deal earlier this offseason. But we'll talk about that in just a sec, if the Knicks should maybe get involved in a discussion for Jrue Holiday. So let's take our final break and then come in and talk about that. All right, Gavin. So Damian Lillard's moved. So that's done. And yet with one name gone, another name takes his place, and that is Jrue Holiday. And he is now apparently super available from Portland because for obvious reasons, they have no want for a mid-30s, all-star-ish caliber guard when they're welcoming in a top draft pick in Scoot Henderson, who they want to get out there as the starting point guard right away, and just in general have a much younger team now with DeAndre Ayton. Clearly, they're going to be looking to kind of change things up a bit and not have older players like that on the team. So the Knicks could, I guess, in theory, put themselves in that discussion. But I think it's first, could they? And then second, should they? Potentially look at Holiday as a target here.
Yeah, and it's tough to say no because again, he's such a good player, such a proven winner. But let's look at what the possibilities are, right? So one trade I saw thrown out on Twitter that the money works for is Evan Fournier, Emmanuel Quickley, Isaiah Hartenstein, and picks. Just doesn't make any sense for Portland because the centerpiece of the trade is another small young guard in Quickley who's awesome, and him and Scoot would be really good together. Maybe there's a world where Portland would say, just because of how good Quickley is defensively, like, all right, he makes more sense for us than Simons, who's at this point clearly a better offensive player than Quickley is, but not in the same multiverse defensively. But I think that would just get too complicated, and they could probably find a cleaner deal than that. Maybe Grimes instead of IQ. I couldn't put in the trade machine because Portland doesn't officially have Jrue Holiday yet. So I would assume that also works money wise. That would be a pretty good deal for Portland. And we're going to go through what the Celtics, Sixers, and Heat can offer for Dame and Grimes. There's a chance maybe outside of Tyler Hero, and he's a better fit than Hero probably would be the best young player that Portland could, at least on my first glance, could get back. So there's a case for it there. I just don't really see it from the Knicks perspective. Just sliding him into the starting lineup with Brunson, RJ, and Randall, that's just so many different guys who need the basketball and who want to shoot and who want to be averaging something like 20 points per game. It's not enough spacing if you replace Grimes or Quickly with him. His defense is incredible, but at 33, turning 34, like it's not going uphill at this point. Obviously, Quickly and Grimes' defenses are both ascending. And then the other option is you could trade Randall or RJ straight up from Randall. They can't do because they don't have another power forward. And I think Randall is arguably a better player at this point, at least in the regular season. RJ, you could do that. And I don't know. I think it would clearly make them better this year. I think when I think this through, Alex, that's the only one that makes like a lick of sense to me.
Yeah, honestly, and this is probably going to be like like Homer Knicks talk or whatever. But if I'm the Knicks, I don't look at this unless it's just such a good value that you can't say no. Where if you could call it Portland and they're just like, you could be like, what do you want? And they'd be like, a young player with some measure of promise and picks.
You're like, Deuce McBride.
Right. No, I'm literally, that's where I'm going to go.
Yeah.
Because you could do like, if they were like, we will take Isaiah Hartenstein and Evan Fournier and Deuce McBride and like 2 or 3 of your protected first round picks and then like your pick this year unprotected for Jrue Holiday. If you're the Knicks, it's like, how do you say no to that? You know,
and even with that, the Knicks, like then they need to trade a guard, right? Because they just have too many guards at that point. Yeah.
Right. But you could go into the season and just sort of like let the cream rise to the top and then figure out what you want to do as the season goes on, I guess. But also, like, if your plan is to play Josh Hart full time at the 4 as the backup 4, then, you know, I guess it opens up a little bit of minutes, but you're certainly going to be like slicing the minutes of, I would say, most likely DiVincenzo at that point. You know, who you just signed to be like a big role player on this team, or maybe we get more RJ Barrett, you know, not closing games in favor of like Quentin Grimes and Jrue Holiday being out there. But then where's Emmanuel Quickly? You know, it's like there's a lot to consider there. And I could never see Tibbs going 3 guard with, even if the defense I think would hold up, but I could never see him going like Brunson
quick. Or Brunson Holiday. I think you could do Brunson Holiday Grimes. I don't know if Tibbs would, but I think you'd be fine doing that.
Oh, no, I think you could do that. I was going to say Brunson Quickly Holiday. I don't think I could ever see him doing that. That's like a true like 3 guard kind of lineup, you know?
Yeah.
It's just too small. So like, but that's pure value play though, because then you say, all right, well, now we're setting ourselves up really well for if that next big star comes along, like by the trade deadline this year or something, then you've just cashed in some of those protected picks to get like a legitimate, like, older and yet still like star level player in Jrue Holiday, who then you could make the centerpiece of another star trade later down the line, potentially the same season or possibly as late as the next offseason. You know, even if you just use him as like a big old salary chunk combined with like whatever you sign Quickly to or something and ship those 2 out together for whoever next year, you know, like next summer, fine. But all in all, I don't think he's a guy the Knicks should be looking to go after. I always have like 2K brain where I just think like, if you can get the guy for the right price, just do it. But it would just create such a messy situation with playing time and stuff. And I wouldn't want to give up on Quickly, Grimes, or even RJ, quite frankly, to go after Jrue Holiday, just because I'm like, how many years does the dude have left? And he has some of the same issues as Julius Randle has had, where it's like in the playoffs, he seems to wilt a bit. And Julius, you know, I still think it was mostly due to injury this year, but still there's no good sample of him in the playoffs, regardless of any context. So do you really want 2 of those guys on your team that you're going to be depending on heavily in the playoffs? I don't know. You know, I mean, Jrue did have a really great playoffs, despite not shooting the best the year that Milwaukee won the championship. But otherwise, it's been pretty dismal otherwise. So I think I would honestly just stay away and just kind of continue holding on to the picks and just hope that the picks more so than Holiday would be more enticing for a deal down the line. Cause I don't think if you get him that he's a long-term piece anyway.
Yeah. I think the question you're asking, like, are you a Jrue Holiday away from a championship? And the answer is probably not. Like, I do think if you replace RJ Barrett with Jrue Holiday in the starting lineup tomorrow, the Knicks are a not insignificantly better team. I think they're much better. But it's I don't even know. I'm not smart enough to find the right way to phrase this, but like in the playoffs, like that almost matters less. Like being a much better team might be the difference between losing to the Bucks in 5 or 6 games, I guess would be the best way I could frame that. And is that worth the picks and maybe screwing up the development of Emmanuel quickly? Like, then this is assuming that you don't think RJ Barrett is going to be very good down the road, which I don't necessarily think, but a lot of people still do. So yeah, I don't think you can do it. And I think the other issue is other teams are probably going to offer are going to be more in on him and are more desperate for him. So let's just quickly go through the other contenders, Alex, and maybe we can even rank like 1 through 3, like where we would least want him to go, where we would most want him to go out of this group. Because the Celtics, I think it would make a lot of sense, especially because he's still unhappy about being marketed over the summer, for them to trade Malcolm Brogdon for him and get basically a better version of Marcus Smart on their team. Because obviously originally they were trying to trade Brogdon instead of Smart for Kristaps Porzingis, and that only fell through because of Brogdon's injury issues. So they could do Brogdon plus picks, which if they just throw enough picks in there, I think Portland would say, yeah, sure, and we could redirect Brogdon somewhere else for even more picks. The Sixers could do a 3-way deal with Harden going to the Clippers, and then basically the Clippers and the Sixers both sending stuff to Portland. I think between them, they could get enough stuff going. And then he could just basically do like a pretty similar trade to what they were offering for Damian Lillard, which would be very, very funny that they're just doing it for a worse player.
Dude, that would be hilarious. That is the number one. Despite the fact that Jrue would visit the Fountain of Youth once he hit Miami and be unstoppable and amazing, like every player freaking does when they go there. Just the sheer joy I would get out of them giving up basically the same package for Jrue Holiday that they were trying to land Damian Lillard with all summer. That would bring me so much joy.
This is really, it's just Pat Riley. Like, it's just so publicly admitting defeat and saying, fine. And to your point, it'd be a great move for them because it would be awesome. But out of those teams, real quick, just to wrap up this show, where would you most want him to end up? Where would you least want him to end up?
I think just for the hilarity, I do want him to most end up in Miami, even though I know it would be dangerous and it might even harm the Knicks more than him going to any of those other teams. They'll just be so funny. Like if they gave up Hero and like multiple first round picks to get him, I would love it. And it would be kind of nice in its own way too, because you would know that would put, like, unlike the team that I'm about to say would be my least favorite, it would put a expiration date effectively on the Heat. You know, they'd still have Bam, obviously, but like Jimmy and Jrue would only have so many more years left. And it's like, okay, this team, they're going for it one last time, but then like eventually it's going to have an expiration date in like 3-4 years from now. And that's great. The Celtics are the team that I would least like. That's just too perfect of a fit. I mean, if you can swap out Brogdon plus picks for him and effectively just swap in Jrue for Brogdon, that's crazy. Like, if they could have a starting, like, one of their biggest problems is that they don't have like a true point guard, like facilitator right now. Jrue fills that perfectly, even if they don't need him to score 20 points per game anymore, which they wouldn't, because then they're going to have him on top of having Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and Kristaps Porzingis, who's a 20 point per game scorer in his own right. That would just be filthy. I mean, that you want to talk about a move that could potentially create another powerhouse in a very different way. Like, I mean, basically just pencil those two in as the top 2 seeds, pencil them in as probably the ECF. And it would just be a heavyweight fight for the next like 2-3 years between those two teams every year. And it would feel very similar, I think, to like Golden State and Houston a few years ago in the West, where you kind of just are waiting for that matchup in the conference finals every year to happen, because it just the teams are just too good.
Yeah, I'm in 100% agreement with you on that latter point. I think as Dame is to Milwaukee in that he's just the perfect fit, Jrue is to Boston in that, like, he wouldn't have to shoot it that well, because you're playing him with Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Porzingis, and Al Horford, and you have 4 guys around him who can shoot. And he just, I mean, like I was just going on about his inefficiency in Milwaukee. Part of that was playing with Giannis on the floor at all times, and sometimes a 5th guy on the floor who couldn't shoot it that well in the paint. Even with Brook Lopez out there being clogged to some extent, him having that kind of space to operate, like you're getting, again, a better version of Marcus Smart, a better version of Derek White, and someone who, like, I think if Boston has a fatal flaw, their issue last year was they lost some of the toughness from the team 2 years ago. And any toughness that was left was embodied by Marcus Smart. And now you have this team that's incredibly talented, can all shoot, but they're going from what made them great under Ime Udoka to Missoula ball, which is just so like finesse, at least in my mind. And I think Holiday just undoes that and makes them even tougher and meaner. And to your point, man, what a matchup that would be between them and the Bucks. The Heat are probably second for me. I love the comedy aspect of it. I just can't help the feeling that they would somehow end up beating the Bucks and everyone would be like, again, and they would get out of the East again somehow because they would just be that much tougher, that much better. Philly just, I obviously they'd be good, but and this sounds bad about maybe future Nick Joel Embiid, but just given his postseasons, like they just. I'm not even saying from a Knicks perspective, just from an NBA perspective. Like until they do it, they don't really scare me. So that's that.
Yeah. I think that's. I mean, I think Philly would be kind of like that. Would obviously just work into some form of a 3-teamer. I feel like, and so you just basically swap Harden for Holiday.
Yeah,
they'd probably still be really good too. I mean, no matter what, either any one of those 3 options, I think the team ends up a good deal better because hopefully for them, they're just giving up like draft capital more or less and just swapping Holiday directly in for another player, either who doesn't want to be there or who isn't as talented. So yeah, it's tough stuff for the Knicks if he ends up in any of those destinations.
Yeah.
But
Best case is the Spurs are like, we want a veteran mentor for Wembanyama. Here's 3 Atlanta picks. Have a field day, Portland.
That would be pretty solid.
That would be nice, but I have a feeling he's going to end up in the East, and that's what sucks about this. Like the East is you're not going to be able to argue that the East is any worse than it was going into the day.
No, and what a flip flop from just a few short years ago where it felt like the West was going to win every single championship. The East is so stacked now. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
And we'll only get more stacked if Jrue Holiday finds his way back to the East via another trade. So we'll see. We'll have more on it if it happens. And especially if the Knicks start finding themselves in conversations for Jrue Holiday, we'll have you covered. As I said before, cool conversation coming up tomorrow with Evan Dammerel of Locked On Cavs, where we'll talk more Giannis, talk about, you want to talk about a woeful team to root for at the moment with with Damian Lillard coming to team up with Giannis. Talk about the guy that has to, or the team that has to face them 4 times a year. That's not super fun. So we're gonna get a little perspective on that, and also potentially revisiting some Donovan Mitchell future rumors and stuff like that. So that's all coming up on tomorrow's show. But for now, thank you all for listening today, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everybody.